Queen Elizabeth I's life is full of mysteries and controversies, from her suspicious relationship with Robert Dudley to her decision not to marry. Was her death due to natural causes, or did her makeup routine have something to do with it? Welcome to History Unvaulted. Today we explore the life and legacy of one of England's most iconic monarchs, Queen Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen. Elizabeth's early life. Elizabeth's early life was marked by unfortunate circumstances. Born at Greenwich Palace to Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn, she was their second daughter, a bitter disappointment to the king who had broken from the Roman Catholic Church to seek a male heir. Her mother's execution for adultery and treason before Elizabeth's third birthday further complicated her legitimacy, which was invalidated by an act of Parliament. Despite these challenges, Elizabeth displayed remarkable maturity, with observers noting her serious demeanor even at a young age. Following the birth of Henry VIII's son, Edward, to his third wife, Jane Seymour, in 1537, Elizabeth's visibility receded, but she was still treated with affection by her father and declared third in line to the throne. She spent much of her time with her half-brother Edward, and later received the loving attention of Catherine Parr, Henry's sixth and final wife. After the death of her father in 1547 and the ascension of her 10-year-old brother Edward to the throne, Elizabeth's life became precarious. Her guardian, Catherine Parr, quickly married the ambitious and discontented Lord High Admiral Thomas Seymour, who plotted against Edward Seymour, the protector of the realm during Edward VI's minority. After Catherine's death in January 1549, Thomas Seymour was arrested for treason and accused of plotting to marry Elizabeth to gain control of the kingdom. Elizabeth was interrogated repeatedly, and it was revealed that Seymour had behaved inappropriately toward her even when Catherine was alive. Despite the danger, Elizabeth remained poised and composed, showing no emotion when told of Seymour's execution. When her Protestant brother Edward died in 1553, Elizabeth was confronted with the ascension of her older half-sister Mary, a devout Catholic who was determined to restore Roman Catholicism to England. Elizabeth's life was in peril in this climate of treasonous rebellion and inquisitorial repression, as she became the obvious beneficiary of plots to overthrow the government and restore Protestantism. Elizabeth was arrested and sent to the Tower of London after Sir Thomas Wyatt's rebellion in January 1554, but was released 2 months later due to the lack of conclusive evidence of her treasonous involvement. Throughout Mary's reign, Elizabeth had to constantly prove her loyalty and abhorrence of heresy, learning how to survive through self-discipline and tactful manipulation of appearances. Elizabeth's self-presentation was often viewed as deceptive by both Protestants and Roman Catholics, but she managed to keep her true beliefs hidden, leaving them a mystery to this day. Throughout her life, there was a stark contrast between her outward appearance and the carefully guarded inner self. People were often intrigued by glimpses they thought they saw of her true self, only to find that they were misled by yet another aspect of her carefully crafted persona. Growing up, Elizabeth was taught to be acutely aware of how she presented herself and how others represented her, and she internalized this lesson, becoming a master of self-presentation. Ascension to the throne. When Mary died on November 17, 1558, Elizabeth ascended to the throne amidst a wave of public jubilation, including bells, bonfires, and patriotic displays. Her arrival in London and the grand coronation procession that followed were a masterful display of political wooing. Elizabeth's every move was scrutinized for indications of the new regime's policies and tone. For example, when an old man in the crowd turned his back on the new queen and wept, Elizabeth confidently exclaimed that he did so out of joy. When a girl in an allegorical pageant presented her with a Bible in English translation, which had been banned under Mary's reign, Elizabeth kissed the book, held it up reverently, and then placed it on her breast. During the first weeks of her reign, Queen Elizabeth's attention was not solely focused on symbolic gestures and public events. She immediately began to establish her government and issue official declarations. This involved reducing the size of the Privy Council, both to purge its Catholic members and to make it more efficient as an advisory body. Additionally, she undertook a restructuring of the vast royal household while balancing the need for administrative and judicial continuity with the desire for change. One of Elizabeth's most significant accomplishments was her role in transforming England from a relatively weak and divided country into a powerful and unified nation. She pursued a policy of cautious expansion, encouraging English trade and colonization overseas, while also successfully defending her country against foreign threats, such as the Spanish Armada in 1588. Elizabeth was also responsible for the establishment of the Church of England, which replaced Roman Catholicism as the country's official religion. This move was a significant departure from the policies of her predecessors, Henry VIII and Mary I, who had both tried to impose their religious views on the country with little success. Elizabeth's efforts to create a more moderate and tolerant religious climate helped to promote stability and unity within England. Under Elizabeth's rule, England experienced a cultural and artistic renaissance, with writers such as William Shakespeare and Christopher Marlowe producing some of the greatest works of literature in the English language. Elizabeth herself was an accomplished writer and patron of the arts, and her court was renowned for its elegance and refinement. Elizabeth's secret affair? When she ascended to the throne, there was intense speculation about a suitable match for her, as the dynastic and diplomatic implications of her marriage were significant. If she died childless, the Tudor line would come to an end, and the nearest heir was Mary, Queen of Scots, a Catholic who was supported by powerful Catholic states and viewed as a nightmarish threat by Protestants. Therefore, it was of grave national concern to find a Protestant husband for Elizabeth who could potentially produce an heir. English suitors courted Elizabeth as well, with the most persistent being her favorite, Robert Dudley, the Earl of Leicester. As a member of the Privy Council and the Queen's Master of the Horse, Leicester was in constant attendance, and Elizabeth displayed all the signs of being romantically attached to him. After Leicester's wife, Amy Robsart, died in a suspicious fall in September 1560, rumors spread that he was poised to marry the Queen. However, despite continued scandalous gossip about their relationship, the decisive step was never taken. Elizabeth's resistance to a marriage she seemed to desire may have been politically motivated, as Leicester had many enemies at court and a questionable reputation in the country. Nevertheless, in October 1562, Elizabeth fell seriously ill with smallpox, and with the real possibility of a contested succession and civil war, even rival factions would have likely supported the marriage. Elizabeth's decision to remain single was driven by her desire to maintain her power and authority as queen. She was loyal to her ministers and valued their advice, but ultimately retained the power to make the final decision on important state affairs. However, unsolicited advice was not always well received, as demonstrated by the severe punishment inflicted on the author and publisher of a pamphlet denouncing the Queen's proposed marriage to the Catholic Duke of Alençon in 1579. Elizabeth's performances and apparent inclination to marry the suitor of the moment often caused great anxiety among her close advisors, and she seemed to use this to her advantage. She was skilled at manipulating factions, leading powerful noblemen to believe they had unique influence over her, only to later discover that a rival had been led to a comparable belief. The Queen's anger was particularly aroused by challenges to what she regarded as her prerogative, and any signs of independence were unwelcome. The courtly atmosphere of vivacity, wit, and romance could suddenly turn cold, and Elizabeth's behavior could be wrathful, earning her the identification with her father's capacity for anger. Elizabeth's influence. The Queen's relationship with Parliament was characterized by a mix of charm and imperiousness. Elizabeth had to rely on Parliament for revenue, and in the early years of her reign, many sessions were marked by a cooperative and celebratory tone. However, as the issue of marriage and succession became more pressing, serious policy differences emerged, and the celebratory tone began to wear thin. More radical members of Parliament sought to broaden the scope of debate to include broader public policy areas, while the Queen's representatives attempted to limit discussions to government bills. Elizabeth was skilled in combining calculated displays of intransigence with graciousness and occasional concessions. She often used the language of love, comparing herself to the spouse or mother of her kingdom to win support. Controversial death. Queen Elizabeth I died on March 24, 1603, at the age of 69. The death of Queen Elizabeth in 1603 remains shrouded in mystery to this day. While it is widely accepted that she died of natural causes, the specific cause of her death has been debated by historians and medical experts for centuries. It's been speculated that Queen Elizabeth I's love for her controversial makeup routine may have played a role in her eventual death. Her iconic look, featuring a heavily applied white lead and vinegar mixture, may have contributed to numerous health issues, including damage to her skin and hair loss. Some historians have even suggested that the lead-based cosmetics could have potentially poisoned her. While there is no definitive proof to support this theory, it is an intriguing possibility to consider when exploring the mystery behind the Queen's death. Regardless of the cause, it's clear that Elizabeth's makeup routine was an important part of her image and legacy, and continues to fascinate historians and beauty enthusiasts alike. Despite numerous attempts to uncover the truth about her death, the mystery remains unsolved. Upon her death, the Queen's body was embalmed and lay in state for several weeks at Richmond Palace. She was then transported to Whitehall Palace, where her funeral took place on April 28, 1603. The funeral was a grand and elaborate affair, befitting a monarch of her stature. Her coffin was carried in a procession to Westminster Abbey, where she was interred in the vault of her grandfather, King Henry VII.